Diego Cordovez.
Adam Schoenfeld.
Welcome to The Scoop, brought to you by Full Tilt Poker. We had David Oppenheim with us last week, and we have him back again. He has played the highest limit games
He only plays
in
the
the
highest.
world. He only plays the highest limit games, and even though he plays very few tournaments, he almost won the 50K Players' Championship at the World Series, and he's had high finishes in WPTs and World Series when he does play. But the real interesting thing is the fact that playing for high stakes for so long against the best players, best cash game players in the world, is something that he's going to talk to us about, and it's going to be interesting.
We always note that the internet games have gotten harder and harder. Have the high limit cash games, the live games that you play in, gotten harder and harder over the past few years?
The high limit cash games, have they gotten harder? I think poker in general has become tougher, definitely. Just high stakes poker's become, it's a different game and it's become tougher.
This may be a sweet time, though, for mixed games and someone who's really proficient in mixed games, because No Limit and Parliament Omaha even have gotten so tough that people now are kind of looking at the mixed games as a new arena, and a lot of guys who've made a lot of money in No Limit or in tournaments are jumping into the mixed games, and they're not obviously that experienced yet. So for someone like you, this could be a really sweet spot, whereas in a year or two, a lot of these guys really might have acquired the skill or the experience.
Definitely. You see a lot of the online high limit, no limit players are jumping into the mixed games, and it's a little bit of a different animal. But yeah, they're definitely jumping in. You see the guys like the Urine Dangers, the Durs, even OMG Clayton was playing it for a while. So yeah, you definitely get them in the games, and they're smart kids, so they're going to learn the games.
I mean, you really are more of an old school player who, for years, of course, played pre-internet and acquired all your skills. Now, actually, most of the time, the big games are online. I mean, some of the live action has dried up, and on Full Tilt, you see the 7-game mix games going a lot.
Yeah.
And I see you in there. So, how big a transition is it for you, where so much of your experience is in the cash games? In some ways, of course, a disadvantage. Even if guys don't play the mixed games as well, they're used to multi-tabling and to playing online. And
for sure, I play online quite a bit on Full Tilt with the 7-game mixes. You're definitely missing quite a bit of information when you don't have somebody sitting in front of you, and I think that for the guys who have a lot of experience and have played cash games for 10, 15 years, that's a pretty big component to see a guy sitting in front of me. And you really see it when you see these internet guys playing live. I mean, they really seem uncomfortable.
Yes, I agree.
They're so much less dangerous, at a poker table than they are online. Just, I guess it's from a comfort level, and also
it is easier to click a button than it is to look a guy right in the face and make a move that could potentially embarrass you, take your whole bankroll. I mean, clicking a button, it's easier in that sense.
Other stuff too, I noticed, like playing online, just because someone takes a while, they might be at another table,
right, or six other tables.
Right. When you're playing with them and someone who usually acts fast, all of a sudden really is, having difficulty with a decision or whatever. I mean, you're getting a lot more information, and you also, the most important thing I always think is you see when they're on tilt, whereas online you're just inferring that they're on tilt.
Right.
And you're not sure.
With online poker, there's definitely a substantial amount of tells. I mean, and it's pretty tough to kind of exactly point your finger at it, but when you've played however 100,000 hands of online poker, you kind of if you develop a feel for that stuff, and the kids definitely, the younger guys who've done it, played I don't know how many, 1 million hands or whatever, they definitely have it, and you kind of just acquire that. You have a feel for strength and weakness online, just like you would live. But there's a definite learning curve, with the online poker.
Now that you mentioned all the information that's available, do you do specific work on your game, like watching videos or reading any of the new books, or do you?
Sadly enough, I just don't do a lot of work on that. I probably should do more. I've always kind of just been the type of poker player that just plays and kind of adapts to the situation. I think it would probably help me to, at least, if nothing else, see kind of what they're thinking about, you know, in certain situations. But I haven't really done a lot of work as far as, you know, watching card runner videos or, you know, reading books. I mean, I've perused some of Dan Harrington's books and on No Limit and stuff like that. But
as you were on the rise and there was a lot less material, was it just completely self-education based on playing, or did you have people that you talked to or people who influenced you who helped you kind of make that jump? Because to make a rapid jump like that, obviously you have to acquire
you know,
certain things.
Well, the way that I learned when I first started was, you know, I mean, I was smart enough to see who the good players are, and I would watch them, you know, and
when you played against them.
Yeah, you know, I would just really, you know, pick one or two of the better players at whatever that level was, and I would really, you know, pay close attention. And then there would be, you know, other players who probably weren't as good as the best players, but the players that really liked to talk about how smart they were and educate the players, you know. And I'm sure you see that to this day, you know. And
those almost are never the best players, by the way.
Right, and they hardly ever are, you know. But
they sometimes know.
But they know a lot. They know a lot of poker theory, and I learned from just listening to, you know, to these guys, you know, whether they'd be criticizing other people's play or criticizing my play, or, you know, talking about whatever they were doing that was so smart, and I would learn a lot from that.
Even if you hear someone discussing something that's not correct, you could still learn from it, which is
right.
There's a lot of value in any
sure.
one of those discussions.
When you, I mean, it's kind of a select group of people, even though now it's widened, as we talked about, but it's still kind of a select group that's playing in the 4,000, 8,000, or 2,000, 4,000. Right. You're not going to have a lot of drop-ins or and so forth. So you play with the same people for years. Have you developed relationships where, even though it's the same competition, with some people away from the table, you really do talk about the game or try to help each other, or is it just each man for himself?
You know, basically when I was 22, I'm still close friends with him. I had a very close friend named Ray DeCargani, who's an incredibly talented poker player. Mm-hmm. We talked a lot about poker, and I learned a lot from him. You know, he was an incredibly bright guy and a fantastic poker player who really, you know, that was kind of he was kind of a sounding board, and I was a sounding board for him, and we would throw, you know, ideas back and forth. But we don't really talk too much about poker anymore. You know, we're after this many years, it's you know, I feel like I'm pretty polished as a poker player, and I still, you know, I'm good friends with Phil Ivey. You know, we talk some poker hands, and I'll never forget last year at the World Series. This was funny. He was at the main event, and
when he made the final table.
When he made the final table, and he called me during a break, and I said, "How's it going?" He's like, "Well, you know, I don't have a lot of chips, but I feel really good. I just laid down jacks pre-flop, and I feel really good about it. And you know, I think I'm playing really well." And of course that show aired, and the guy moved in on him with like 2-7, and he folded.
He got re-raised with 2-7.
And we're talking about Phil Ivey here. So, anyways.
Yeah, even Phil Ivey's not perfect.
Yeah, and I think he's probably as close to perfect as you know, as you get on the poker table. So
yeah, that was. I mean, I think for a lot of people who just had the image of complete perfection, even though he's still undoubtedly the best overall player in the world, when they show that hand, combined with the one hand where he misread the board earlier in the tournament, that he had a flush and he mucked it, people just realized, like, there is nobody perfect. I mean, if Phil Ivey misreads the board and then lays down,
people who don't,
anyone can.
It's
a lot easier when you're watching the hands on TV. I mean,
I've encountered a lot of people recently who are not really poker players, and all they want to talk about is that Phil Ivey laid down the flush when he didn't look back at his hand. And you know, and I guess I've taken the position that if Phil Ivey has done that, and we saw it one time, I just want to know how many times I've laid down flushes, maybe 1,000 times more, you know, when I didn't look back.
Could be. It's hard to say, but you assume that it never happens. And Phil probably would never believe it. I mean, if they hadn't shown it on camera and you'd bet him, he might have bet $1 million that he hadn't, you know, that he hadn't laid down the best hand ever.
Yeah.
I'll still take my chances betting on Phil.
Thanks for joining us on The Scoop, brought to you by Full Tilt Poker. And David Oppenheim has a lot to talk about. And he's not a flash in the pan, to say the least.
No, he's got
so with
endurance.
almost 20 years of high limit experience and playing in the biggest cash games and biggest tournaments in the world, we'll have him back next week, and we'll join you then.